Alright, Dragon Ball fans, buckle up, because today we're diving into one of the most controversial yet fascinating parts of the franchise, Dragon Ball GT. Love it or hate it, there's no denying its impact. And with Dragon Ball Daima looking heavily inspired by GT, it's safe to say its influence isn't going anywhere anytime soon. But here's the thing, what we actually got in Dragon Ball GT is not what the creators originally had in mind. There were a ton of cut ideas, scrapped episodes, and transformations that we never got to see. Some of these were left on the cutting room floor due to time constraints, while others were straight up rejected before they even had a chance.
No, no, mm-mm, mm-mm, no, 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 hell no!
And today we're breaking it all down, what Dragon Ball GT was supposed to be, what we almost got, and the lost concepts that could have changed everything. So Dragon Ball GT wasn't always meant to be an anime original sequel, but the original idea was actually something closer to what Dragon Ball Super became, a series set in the 10-year timeskip after the Majin Buu saga. But instead of focusing on Goku, it was meant to shine the spotlight on the next generation, Goten, Trunks, Pan, and the rest. Sounds like a solid idea, right? Well, not everyone thought so. The pitch was ultimately rejected, with some even calling it disrespectful because it wasn't a completely separate story from the original manga. That's when Toriyama got involved, and the decision was made to set GT after the original series. But even then, the focus still wasn't meant to be on the younger generation. So how did we end up with Goku as the main character again? Simple. Since Goku was seen as the soul of Dragon Ball, they decided to keep him in the spotlight, but with a twist. They turned him back into a child. Not only did this keep him involved, but it also gave them an excuse to limit his overwhelming power. And to make things even more unpredictable, they took the story to space, because let's be real, anything can happen in space. In fact, the original plan was for GT to run for years, with endless spacefaring adventures, but of course, things didn't go that way. Now let's talk about one of the biggest what-ifs in Dragon Ball GT history, Pan Super Saiyan transformation. This was actually considered at one point, but it never made it into the show. Koso Morishita, the producer of Dragon Ball GT, revealed that if they had gone through with it, the perfect moment for Pan's transformation would have been the episode where she gets turned into a doll. If that episode had happened later in the series, she would have gone Super Saiyan right then and there. The GT Perfect Files, an official guidebook for the series, even teased this idea, stating that if the right conditions were met, both Pan and Vegeta's daughter Bra should have been able to transform. It even goes as far as suggesting that when the worst crisis strikes, the first female Super Saiyan in history may emerge. Of course, we know this never happened, but imagine how different GT would have felt if Pan had her own Super Saiyan moment. Speaking of the GT Perfect Files, this book actually contained a lot of lore details that weren't fully explored in the anime. For example, it was one of the first sources to state that planet Vegeta wasn't the Saiyans' original home world, it actually belonged to the Tuffles first. This idea was loosely inspired by plan to eradicate the Saiyans, where the Saiyans crash landed on planet Plant after chaos erupted on their home world. Fast forward to Dragon Ball Super, and we now have planet Sadala as a true Saiyan home world. So in a way, this GT tidbit kinda came full circle. Another crazy detail? There was a theory that the Great Ape form was actually the Saiyan's original state, and they evolved from it over time. This could have opened up some wild storytelling possibilities. Now here's where it gets really interesting. GT's staff originally outlined 26 episodes before realizing the whole space adventure theme wasn't working. That's when they pivoted to making Earth the center of the action again. Out of those original 26, only some made it into the final show, but one scrapped episode that we do know about involved Goku and the gang landing on a planet full of prisoners. Sounds a bit familiar, right? That's because we later got a very similar idea in the Moro arc of Dragon Ball Super. And then there's the concept art from Toriyama himself. He actually designed some of the planned episodes, giving us a glimpse into what could have been. Some ideas made it in, like a giant world and a desert planet, but one concept featuring Goku, Pan and Trunks fighting grotesque aliens never happened. The aliens never showed up, Trunks never used a gun, and Pan never rocked a jean jacket. So that entire storyline, completely scrapped. Of course, we can't talk about Dragon Ball GT without mentioning Super Saiyan 4. This transformation is iconic, but it actually had a few different ideas behind the scenes. Originally, the concept for Super Saiyan 4 was created by Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru, who wanted it to be radically different from previous forms. The first design, Black-haired Super Saiyan 4. But did you know they also considered Golden Super Saiyan 4? This idea has since become a huge part of fan culture, but it almost made it into the show itself. The first official Super Saiyan 4 colors appeared in Cardass magazine in 1996, a full month before it showed up in the anime. And get this, the original design had grey fur instead of red. And when it came to Vegeta Super Saiyan 4, the original idea had him sporting a Super Saiyan 3-like hairstyle with wild upward spikes that resembled a star shape. But honestly, I'm so glad they changed it, because Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta's final design is a chef's kiss. One of the biggest missed opportunities in GT was Gohan's character arc. Originally, he was supposed to have a big moment where he regains his fighting spirit after Vidal gets hurt. There was even a scene written where he finds his old gi and says to think there'd come a day where I'd wear this again. But this entire subplot was cut, and all we got was Gohan taking off his glasses. Talk about a downgrade. Another lost moment, Android 17's fate. He was originally supposed to be revived at the end, but due to time constraints, that scene was scrapped, even though they had originally written the dialogue. At the end of the day, Dragon Ball GT was an ambitious project with a lot of hurdles. It wasn't perfect, and we will probably never visit that timeline, but its legacy still lives on. And who knows, maybe Dragon Ball Daima will bring some of these lost ideas to life in the future. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more updates. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.